At exactly 8 a.m. on a Monday morning in 1986, expecting another ordinary start to the week, the manager of the First Interstate Bank in West Hollywood walked toward the main vault. He entered the security code, spun the heavy combination dial, pulled the thick steel door open, and stepped into a nightmare. Instead of neat rows of metal safe deposit boxes holding millions of dollars in cash, jewelry, gold, and family treasures, he was greeted by the choking smell of burnt concrete and damp earth. A layer of fine gray dust covered the floor. Dozens of safe deposit boxes had been violently forced open. Their metal doors hung crooked from broken hinges like loose teeth. Scattered everywhere were the belongings the thieves didn't care about: family photographs, birth certificates, legal documents, and empty velvet jewelry cases. But the destruction wasn't the most shocking part. It was the floor. Right in the middle of the reinforced concrete vault was a perfectly round black hole, about 16 inches wide, disappearing straight into darkness. The bank had just lost more than $3 million. Yet nothing else made sense. The front doors were still locked. The windows weren't broken. The alarms had never gone off. The motion sensors hadn't detected a single movement. The thieves hadn't entered through the bank. They had come from underneath it. And before leaving, they sprayed 6 polite words onto the vault wall. "Thank you, it's been a pleasure." How do you secretly dig a massive tunnel underneath the busiest city in America without a single person noticing? The secret behind this impossible robbery had very little to do with bank security. It had everything to do with the hidden world beneath Los Angeles. On the surface, the First Interstate Bank looked impossible to rob. Located on the corner of Sunset Boulevard and Spalding Avenue, it was built like a fortress. Heavy steel doors protected every entrance. Bulletproof glass guarded the lobby. Motion sensors covered every angle, and the main vault rested on a massive slab of reinforced concrete. Breaking in through the front would have triggered an immediate police response. But beneath the traffic, bright lights, and palm trees of Los Angeles lies a second city that most people never see. To prevent flooding during the rainy season, the city built an enormous network of underground storm drains. These aren't tiny pipes. Many are huge concrete tunnels that follow the paths of long-forgotten streams buried beneath the streets. Every day, thousands of people walk over storm grates without realizing there's a silent maze stretching for miles beneath their feet. The men who robbed the First Interstate Bank, later nicknamed the Hole-in-the-Ground Gang, looked at that underground maze and saw something completely different. They saw the perfect getaway route. The FBI would later conclude that these weren't desperate criminals chasing quick money. They were skilled professionals. Many investigators believed they had backgrounds in mining, heavy construction, or city public works. They understood Los Angeles's hidden geography better than most engineers. They knew which storm drains connected to which streets. More importantly, they knew exactly where to stop digging if they wanted to end up directly beneath the bank. But there was one enormous problem. You can't dig a tunnel large enough for a person using nothing but a shovel. You need power tools, heavy equipment, generators, drills, water pumps, and all of that has to be moved through miles of underground tunnels without anyone above hearing a thing. The gang solved this problem in a surprisingly simple way. They built their own underground transportation system. After mapping the largest storm drains, they bought Suzuki four-wheel drive ATVs and drove them directly through the tunnels. The compact vehicles hauled hundreds of pounds of mining equipment deep beneath the city until the crew reached the exact spot underneath the bank. There, they parked the ATVs and transformed the dirt into a professional construction site. They were now roughly 100 feet away from the bottom of the bank vault. The only thing separating them from millions of dollars was layers of Southern California soil, bedrock, and reinforced concrete. So, hidden beneath Hollywood, they started digging. Movies make tunnel digging look easy. A few swings of a pickaxe, a quick montage, and suddenly the criminals burst into a bank vault. Reality is much harsher. Every inch underground is a fight against physics. The deeper a tunnel goes, the more millions of pounds of earth above are trying to crush the empty space you've created. One weak support beam, one patch of unstable soil, one small mistake, and the entire tunnel collapses, burying everyone alive. The Hole-in-the-Ground Gang understood this better than anyone. Their first enemy wasn't the FBI. It wasn't bank security. It was the dirt itself. Excavation creates a problem most people never think about. Packed soil underground is tightly compressed. But once you dig it up, it expands. Engineers call this the swell factor. 1 cubic yard of solid earth quickly becomes around 1.3 cubic yards of loose dirt. Over a 100-foot tunnel, that small increase turns into tons of extra material that has to go somewhere. Leaving piles of dirt inside the storm drains wasn't an option. The next rainstorm would wash it into a blockage, flood nearby streets, and send city maintenance crews underground. So the gang came up with another clever solution. They turned the city itself into their cleanup crew. Instead of storing the dirt, they dumped it into the flowing water inside the active storm drain system. The current mixed it into muddy slurry and carried the evidence all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Every shovelful disappeared almost as quickly as it was dug up. But getting rid of the dirt solved only half the problem. A tunnel this deep is an incredibly dangerous place to work. Fresh air barely circulates. Running gasoline-powered equipment underground is almost suicidal. The exhaust fills the confined space with carbon monoxide, an invisible gas that can knock a person unconscious without warning and kill an entire crew within minutes. Once again, the gang had already planned for it. They hauled heavy timber into the tunnel and built professional wooden supports capable of holding back the enormous weight of the city above them. Then they solved the power problem in an even more impressive way. Instead of relying on portable generators, they tapped directly into Los Angeles's electrical grid. Long extension cables snaked through the storm drains, supplying enough electricity to power industrial work lights that turned the darkness into daylight. Heavy-duty electric fans continuously forced fresh air through the tunnel, creating a steady supply of oxygen for the workers below. By the time they finished, this wasn't simply a hole in the ground. It was a fully powered, fully ventilated underground mining operation stretching beneath the streets of Hollywood. And while the crew worked in the mud with industrial drills and construction equipment, thousands of people walked overhead without the slightest idea what was happening beneath their feet. Welcome to the Heist Vault. Behind every heist there's a story. Some end in prisons, some end in graves, and some simply disappear. While the crew spent their days covered in mud, operating heavy drills beneath the city, life above them carried on as if nothing was happening. Every morning, employees at the First Interstate Bank unlocked the front doors. Customers stopped by to deposit paychecks. Tellers counted cash, stamped paperwork, and chatted with regular clients. The lobby was bright, clean, air-conditioned, and felt completely secure. No one suspected that a construction project was taking place directly beneath their feet. But as May rolled on, something strange started happening. At first, employees noticed a faint vibration in the floor. Then came a low grinding noise. Sometimes it sounded like heavy scraping. Other times it was a slow rhythmic thud, coming from somewhere below the building. The tellers were genuinely unsettled. There was no roadwork outside, no construction crews, and no obvious explanation. Soon, rumors spread through the office. People joked that the bank was haunted. The mysterious sounds became a regular topic of conversation in the break room. Management eventually hired a security company to inspect the vault and alarm system. Everything checked out perfectly. The steel vault door was secure. The motion sensors worked flawlessly. The alarms showed no problems. Thinking it might be a plumbing issue, they even called plumbers to inspect the pipes. They found nothing. What no one realized was that the strange noises weren't coming from the plumbing at all. They were listening to industrial masonry drills slowly chewing through the concrete beneath the vault. The story gets even stranger. While tapping into the bank's underground electrical supply to power their equipment, the thieves accidentally crossed wires with the building's internal audio system. As they drilled through dirt and concrete in total darkness, soft elevator music suddenly started playing inside their tunnel. For weeks, the crew carried out one of the most ambitious bank robberies in American history while listening to the bank's own Muzak playlist. By early June, the tunnel was finally complete. The crew had successfully dug 100 feet through dirt, carefully maintaining the correct angle until their tools struck something solid. They had reached the bottom of the bank. But one final obstacle remained. Above them sat an 18-inch thick slab of heavily reinforced concrete. It was packed with thick steel rebar, designed to survive earthquakes and stop anyone from breaking in. The hardest part of the job was still ahead. A sledgehammer was out of the question. The noise alone would trigger the bank's seismic alarms. They needed something quieter, something precise. They needed a diamond-tipped core drill. Unlike a normal drill bit that twists into a surface, a core drill looks like a hollow metal cylinder. Its cutting edge is coated with industrial diamonds, the hardest natural material on Earth. Instead of smashing concrete apart, it slowly grinds a perfect circle through stone and steel. But drilling into a bank floor from below creates a problem construction workers almost never face: gravity. Normally, workers drill downward and use their body weight to push the machine into the concrete. This crew had to do the exact opposite. They had to lift a heavy spinning drill above their heads inside a cramped, muddy tunnel and force it upward for hours. To stop the diamond blade from overheating, the drill also needed a constant flow of cold water. As it cut into the ceiling, muddy concrete slurry poured continuously onto the workers' faces, clothes, and chests. It was exhausting, miserable work. Every few inches, the drill struck thick steel rebar buried inside the concrete. The machine screamed and kicked back violently, forcing the crew to brace themselves against the wooden supports surrounding them. Hour after hour, they kept grinding. Then finally, the drill broke through. The crew carefully lowered the heavy concrete core into the tunnel. They had carved a perfectly round opening through the bank floor. The hole measured only about 16 to 20 inches across, barely wide enough for an adult to squeeze through. To make the climb easier, they lined it with a plastic pipe. One by one, the thieves shimmied upward and crawled out of the mud. When the first man reached the top and switched on his flashlight, the beams swept across rows of polished metal safe deposit boxes. Months of planning. Weeks of digging. Hundreds of feet of tunneling. It had all worked. They were standing inside the main vault of the First Interstate Bank. This was where the brilliance of the plan became obvious. The bank's security system was designed to stop someone from entering from outside. Motion detectors covered the lobby. Cameras watched every entrance. But the vault itself was isolated behind a massive steel door. As long as the thieves stayed inside the vault and never opened that door, the motion sensors couldn't see them. They were literally inside the most secure room in the building. Completely invisible. With the difficult construction finally behind them, the operation changed from engineering to treasure hunting. Safe deposit boxes are private lockboxes rented by customers who want to store valuables away from home. The bank doesn't even know what's inside them. Normally, opening one requires two keys at the same time, a master key held by the bank and a personal key owned by the customer. The hole-in-the-ground gang didn't have either. Instead, they brought hydraulic spreaders and heavy-duty pry bars. For the next day and a half, they worked methodically from box to box. Each metal door popped open, revealing another mystery. They dumped the contents into heavy canvas duffel bags. Some boxes contained stacks of cash. Others held rare coin collections. There were expensive jewelry pieces, gold bars, and bearer bonds that could be exchanged without proving ownership. Every box was another surprise. By the time they finished, they had looted dozens of customers. The total value of everything they stole exceeded $3 million, roughly $8 million in today's money. By Sunday evening, the bags were full. They knew Monday morning was only hours away. It was time to disappear. But before leaving, they decided to have a little fun. Most bank robbers escape in panic. This crew felt so relaxed and so confident that they took out a can of spray paint and left a message on the vault wall. Different reports quote it slightly differently, but the famous line has always remained the same. "Thank you, it's been a pleasure." After that, they lowered the duffel bags into the hole, slid back down the plastic pipe, packed up their remaining equipment, walked to their waiting ATVs, loaded millions of dollars worth of cash, gold, and valuables onto the racks, and disappeared into the dark Los Angeles storm drains. Above ground, the weekend passed without incident. Traffic rolled along Sunset Boulevard. Restaurants filled with customers. People went shopping, watched movies, and enjoyed their Sunday. No one had any idea that one of the most sophisticated bank robberies in American history had just taken place directly beneath their feet. Then Monday morning arrived. At exactly 8 a.m., the branch manager walked into work carrying a cup of coffee. It was the same routine as every other week. He turned off the lobby alarms, switched on the fluorescent lights, walked over to the massive steel vault door, spun the combination dial, heard the heavy locking bolts slide open, grabbed the handle, and pulled. He expected to see neat rows of untouched safe deposit boxes. Instead, he stepped into a nightmare. The air smelled of burnt concrete and stale earth. Gray dust covered the floor. Safe deposit boxes had been ripped apart. Personal belongings were scattered everywhere. Then his eyes dropped to the center of the room. A perfectly round black hole stared back at him from the concrete floor. Beside it, sprayed across the wall in bold letters, was a message. "Thank you, it's been a pleasure." The manager didn't take another step. He quietly backed out of the vault, locked the heavy steel door behind him to preserve the crime scene, and immediately called the Los Angeles Police Department. When officers from the Los Angeles Police Department arrived, they were confused. The vault door was still locked. There were no signs of forced entry. No broken windows. No damaged locks. No witnesses who saw anyone enter or leave the building. Then the bank manager unlocked the vault and showed them the hole in the floor. The officers immediately realized this wasn't an ordinary bank robbery. This was a multi-million-dollar federal crime. They picked up the phone and called the FBI. Within an hour, agents from the FBI's bank robbery squad arrived in West Hollywood. These investigators were used to dealing with desperate criminals. People who slipped notes across teller counters. Violent gangs that stormed banks with guns. Smash-and-grab robberies that lasted less than 2 minutes. Nothing in their experience prepared them for what they found inside the First Interstate Bank. This wasn't the work of reckless thieves. It looked like the work of professional engineers. The crew had access to heavy machinery. They had a budget. They had months to plan. And they possessed an almost unbelievable understanding of Los Angeles's underground infrastructure. To solve the crime, the FBI couldn't stay inside the bank. They had to go underground. The lead investigators drove to a local sporting goods store and bought rubber fishing waders, waterproof boots, ropes, and heavy-duty flashlights. Back at the bank, they tied ropes around their waists, squeezed through the narrow opening in the vault floor, and carefully lowered themselves into the darkness. When their boots hit the mud, the flashlights revealed something that left even experienced agents speechless. This wasn't a crude tunnel hacked together by amateurs. It looked like a professional mining operation. Heavy wooden supports held back the surrounding earth. Industrial extension cords were neatly secured along the beams to keep them out of the mud. The remains of a water pump system still sat where the thieves had left it, used to cool the diamond drill during the final breakthrough. Every detail showed careful planning. Every detail showed experience. The agents slowly pushed forward through the cramped tunnel. After crawling through the dirt passage, they suddenly emerged into a huge concrete chamber. They had reached the Los Angeles storm drain system. In a normal robbery investigation, detectives search for a getaway car. They look for tire marks in a parking lot or footprints leading away from the building. This investigation was different. The FBI pointed their flashlights toward the muddy floor of the storm drain. Stamped into the wet ground were deep, aggressive tire tracks. 4-wheel drive ATVs. The agents began following them. For block after block, they walked through the dark underground maze, listening to rushing water echo off the concrete walls. The tracks twisted left, then right, then deeper into the tunnel network. Eventually, they led to a large storm drain exit near a local park, miles away from the bank. That was where the gang had escaped. No witnesses had seen muddy men climbing out of the drain in the middle of the night. No one noticed them loading duffel bags filled with millions of dollars into a waiting vehicle. The hole-in-the-ground gang had simply disappeared into the endless sprawl of Los Angeles. Because they needed to leave quickly, the thieves abandoned much of their heavy equipment. For investigators, it looked like a gold mine of evidence. The FBI recovered electric cables, shovels, water pumps, wooden supports, and even the expensive diamond-tipped core drill used to cut through the vault floor. Normally, finding the tools means finding the criminals. Serial numbers can lead investigators to hardware stores. Purchase records can identify buyers. Receipts can reveal names. Except this crew had already thought of that. The agents cleaned the mud off every drill, pump, and tool they recovered. Every single serial number had been carefully filed away. There was nothing left to trace. The wooden beams offered no help either. Investigators discovered the timber hadn't been purchased from a supplier. It had been stolen weeks earlier from an unrelated construction site, making it impossible to connect to the gang. The FBI had a 100-foot tunnel, $3 million in missing valuables, an entire underground construction site, and not a single usable clue. By the end of the first day, the investigation had already stalled. The agents needed a mistake, an informant, anything. Instead, all they had was a polite thank you note spray-painted on a vault wall. When physical evidence leads nowhere, investigators turn to behavior. They stop asking what happened. They start asking who could have done it. The lead FBI agent, William Redder, quickly realized they weren't looking for ordinary bank robbers. Typical bank thieves are impatient. They want money fast. Many already have criminal records. Some are feeding addictions. Others rely on intimidation and violence. The hole-in-the-ground gang was the complete opposite. They spent months underground, working in mud, breathing recycled air, building support structures, running electrical systems. And somehow, nobody panicked. Nobody bragged. Nobody made a careless mistake. That level of discipline was almost unheard of. The FBI and the LAPD invited civil engineers and concrete specialists to study the crime scene. The experts were amazed. The wooden supports were professionally built. The ventilation system was expertly designed. Even the way the core drill had been mounted to push upward through reinforced concrete showed advanced knowledge. The conclusion was unavoidable. Whoever built this tunnel did similar work for a living. Investigators believe the crew likely included miners, municipal contractors, or experienced public works employees. They knew the Los Angeles storm drain system so well that they could navigate tunnels many city residents didn't even know existed. But knowing the gang's skills wasn't enough. Southern California had thousands of construction workers and engineers. Without fingerprints, witnesses, serial numbers, or informants, there was no way to narrow the list. The case slowly went cold. As months passed without a single arrest, something unexpected happened. Fear spread through the banking industry. Before this robbery, security had been simple. Protect the doors. Protect the windows. Protect the vault. The hole-in-the-ground gang changed that forever. They proved that banks could also be attacked from below. Suddenly, every vault in Los Angeles felt vulnerable. Even the investigators became paranoid. Years later, Agent William Redder admitted that many of them couldn't stop imagining tunnels beneath the city. They pictured the ground under West Hollywood like a giant prairie dog colony, filled with secret passages. They worried about waking up one morning to discover 5 banks robbed at once. Or 10. Or 20. To calm those fears, police officers and city workers were sent underground to inspect storm drains beneath major banks throughout West Hollywood. They searched for fresh dirt. Fresh tunnels. Fresh holes. They found nothing. Winter arrived. Banks upgraded their seismic alarms. Employees returned to normal. Newspapers stopped covering the story. Slowly, people forgot about the mysterious thieves who had vanished beneath Los Angeles. But the hole-in-the-ground gang wasn't finished yet. Some criminals who pull off a perfect multi-million-dollar heist take the money and disappear forever. It is the ultimate dream: you win the game, you retire, and you never risk going to prison again. But for this crew, it seemed like the money was only half the thrill. The real drug was the engineering itself, the challenge of beating the system. A year later, in 1987, they decided to do it again. They returned to the dark storm drains of Los Angeles. They brought back their Suzuki ATVs, their heavy timber, and their diamond-tipped drills. But this time, their ambition completely skyrocketed. The crew didn't just target one bank. They targeted 2. And they decided to dig them at the exact same time. The first target was a Bank of America branch on Pico Boulevard. The second target was a Union Federal Savings and Loan on Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills. Because the banks were miles apart, the tunnels were not connected. This means the crew wasn't just managing one massive underground construction site. They were running 2 completely separate mining operations in 2 entirely different branches of the sewer system. They had to haul heavy lumber, run massive extension cords, and manage the loose dirt for 2 different sites simultaneously. Just like they did a year earlier, the crew set up their core drill, pushed it up into the ceiling of the dirt tunnel, and successfully ground their way through the concrete floor of the vault. They squeezed up through the hole and into the secure room. But this time, something went wrong. Maybe their drill bumped a structural wire, or maybe the bank had upgraded their seismic sensors after the 1986 heist. Whatever happened, a silent alarm tripped. Down at the LAPD dispatch, the board lit up. The crew realized instantly that their perfect quiet bubble had burst, and the police were already on their way. They had to abandon their patient strategy and run. They frantically grabbed around $98,000 in cash, but they had to leave massive stacks of money sitting right there on the floor. They dropped back down the hole and fled into the sewers. When the LAPD arrived at the Bank of America, they looked inside the vault, saw the dark hole in the floor, and instantly realized the hole-in-the-ground gang had returned. Knowing the thieves used the storm drains to escape, the LAPD launched a massive, immediate underground manhunt. Police officers and city workers strapped on boots, grabbed heavy flashlights, and flooded the Los Angeles sewer grid, desperately trying to cut off the fleeing suspects. They didn't catch the crew. But just hours after the alarm went off, search teams exploring a completely different branch of the sewer system under Beverly Hills stumbled across something incredible. As their flashlights swept across the dark rushing water, the beams hit a massive pile of loose dirt and thick wooden framing built into the wall of the concrete pipe. The police had found the second active tunnel. This one was aimed directly at the Union Federal Savings and Loan. The tunnel was completely finished, braced with fresh wood, right up to the bottom of the concrete vault. The heavy construction equipment, the drills, and the industrial extension cords were all still sitting there in the mud. The only thing missing was the crew. When the FBI eventually discovered the abandoned tunnels, panic swept through the department all over again. Because the crew had to scramble to escape the police dragnet, they couldn't take their underground transit system with them. They fled on foot, leaving their fleet of Suzuki ATVs sitting right there in the mud of the storm drains. For the FBI, finding these vehicles felt like the ultimate smoking gun. Unlike a wooden plank or a stolen drill, an ATV is a massive piece of machinery tied to a registered vehicle identification number, VIN. Investigators assumed it was game over. They could trace the VINs, find the buyer, and finally put handcuffs on the hole-in-the-ground gang. They hauled the muddy four-wheelers out of the sewer, ran the numbers, and successfully tracked them to local Southern California dealerships. Agents walked in, flashed their badges, and pulled the sales records. But the crew's meticulous discipline struck again. The paperwork was entirely useless. The ATVs had been purchased with stacks of straight cash, no financing, no credit checks, and no bank loans. The buyers had used completely fake names and addresses. The only piece of evidence the FBI walked away with was a vague memory from the salesman. They described the buyers as white males in their early 30s, slim and muscular, wearing construction clothes, and speaking accentless American English. In Los Angeles, that doesn't narrow the suspect pool at all. It perfectly describes tens of thousands of guys working on job sites across the city. Even in a panic state, the crew had beaten them. They had anticipated from day one that things might go wrong and the ATVs might have to be abandoned, making absolutely sure the paper trail led nowhere. The discovery proved something terrifying. The hole-in-the-ground gang was still active, still invisible, and still capable of bypassing some of the most advanced bank security systems in America. Yet despite all the effort that had gone into those tunnels, the thieves never returned. The second operation was abandoned forever. And after that, they simply vanished. Years passed. Then a decade. Then another. The FBI kept the case open, hoping time would finally work in their favor. Maybe someone would try to sell one of the rare coins stolen from a safety deposit box. Maybe a former gang member would have a falling out. Maybe an ex-partner or ex-girlfriend would call the police for reward money. The First Interstate Bank even offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to the thieves. Adjusted for inflation, that's roughly $140,000 today just for making an anonymous phone call. For investigators, rewards like that usually break even the strongest criminal friendships. Eventually, someone talks. Someone always wants the money. But not this time. The hole-in-the-ground gang never betrayed one another. Not a single member came forward. Not a single informant appeared. They maintained complete silence. Then something unexpected happened. The law itself started working in the gang's favor. In the United States, most crimes have a statute of limitations. That means the government has a limited amount of time to charge someone with a crime. If prosecutors miss that deadline, the suspect can no longer be prosecuted, even if overwhelming evidence appears later. Murder is one of the few major exceptions. Federal bank burglary is not. For that crime, the statute of limitations is generally 5 years. By the early 1990s, the clock ran out. The FBI had no choice but to admit defeat. Legally, the men behind one of the most remarkable bank robberies in American history could no longer be charged. It created a bizarre situation. In theory, the thieves could walk into LAPD headquarters carrying the original tunnel blueprints. They could place the diamond-tipped core drill on the front desk, confess to stealing millions of dollars from the First Interstate Bank, explain exactly how they did it, and the police still couldn't arrest them. Former FBI agent William Redder later joked that the only thing law enforcement could legally do at that point was take the thieves to a nearby bar and buy them a beer. No handcuffs. No jail. Just a conversation. The hole-in-the-ground gang accomplished what countless criminals only dream about. They bypassed every alarm, ignored every locked door, never pointed a gun, never threatened a hostage. They spent months quietly building a hidden mine beneath one of the busiest cities in America, stole millions of dollars, left behind a polite thank you note, and disappeared back into the concrete maze beneath Los Angeles. To this day, no one knows exactly who they were. And that's what makes this story so remarkable. Sometimes the perfect bank robbery isn't pulled off with violence or intimidation. Sometimes, all it takes is patience, engineering, and a shovel. This is the Heist Vault. Subscribe for more true heists, robberies, and the unbelievable stories behind history's biggest crimes.